Third for setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen. Izzo's dying for a moving screen.
It's that dreaded moving screen.
All right. We good?
Yep.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Moving Screen Podcast. I'm Brendan Quinn of The Athletic, here with Dylan Burkhart of Hoops. It is Monday, November 23rd, and as of right now, we are 48 hours from basketball. Dylan, are you excited?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure who's going to be playing and when on Wednesday, but I'm pretty sure there will be some college basketball for us to watch and talk about. Do you agree?
I think that these games will hopefully happen. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of rescheduled shit and things bouncing around, but as of now, and for our purposes of this podcast, there's 2 games on the docket. Luckily, been no bad news yet. Michigan State hosting Eastern Michigan, Michigan hosting Bowling Green. Wednesday, 4 o'clock start in Ann Arbor and a 6 o'clock start in East Lansing. I like today and over the weekend a little bit. I kind of like started reading, got into my blue ribbon, started reading some preseason stuff, and it does like now feel like shit. The season's going to start.
We've been waiting for it. You've been out covering golf and bullshitting around all summer. Some of us have been thinking about basketball for months here. We're just holding on to something, and you're over here just parachuting in right now.
That's right. No commitment. And if they cancel the season, I just go right back to golf like it never happened.
Unbelievable. But we're almost here. It feels.
I'm excited.
It's starting to really hit me. Like, I know there's been a lot of drama in the news today and everything, but It's starting to hit me. There's going to be basketball games on Wednesday. We're going to have spreads. We're going to have games on TV. We're going to be looking up streams to watch whatever games at 9 a.m. Like, I'm all in now. I'm ready.
Yeah, and it was interesting. There was like an hour window today where a bunch of things dropped. Right, Duke's openers canceled, Tennessee's pausing, blah 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 blah, and yeah, I kind of made the point on Twitter. It's people do need to remember that there's 357 Division I basketball teams, and there's 357 Division I basketball teams that are scheduled to play upwards of 25, 27 games this year. Like, there's going to be a lot of cancellations. There's going to be a lot of weird shit that happens. But in the grand scheme of things, like every single thing that happens is fairly nominal. But right now it feels massive anytime, oh my God, Duke Gardner-Webb was postponed. It just feels huge in that moment. And you just realize well, there's going to be 70 games that day or whatever it is. And yes, there's going to be cancellations.
Yeah.
There's obviously some shit's being done better than others. Like this Mohegan Sun thing, the fact that this even remained an idea is insane. That they didn't realize that things like the South Dakota thing, that all needed to have been bagged a while ago, and it just wasn't. But whatever. So things are going to happen there. But there's going to be basketball played, and a lot of basketball played.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone really cares if Duke plays Gardner-Webb on December 1st. It's going to be complete. It's going to be just as important, right? These games are going to get moved around, whatever. They'll get figured out. I think Michigan and Michigan State both did a really good job, I think, of kind of putting together responsible schedules, considering the circumstances. Both kind of stuck to the things they had to stick to, right? Like the Big Ten ACC Challenge, for Duke the champion, or for Michigan State the Champions Classic with Duke. But they came up with ways to do it that made sense, right? Like I made jokes on Twitter about having to go to Duke to play that game. That's also probably a way safer environment than a 4-team event in some random neutral arena where you're going to be dealing with all this other stuff. It's a lot easier to control the environment. Michigan State playing Notre Dame, same deal, right? Like that's just a smart scheduling agreement between two schools who are going to do things the right way. You can take a bus. You don't have to deal with all this other drama. So I think that's notable and might bode well for how this plays out over the next few weeks. But again, you're hoping that mid-majors that you're hosting in these opening weeks are going to be COVID-free when they have not been. Like Michigan and Michigan State have been testing daily for weeks or at least months even. these mid-major schools are just really starting to test regularly. So you don't really know what you're going to get into. And that's kind of why we're seeing all of this chaos over the last 72 hours. Because these schools are like, okay, well, we're about to get on the bus. Let's take a test. And
yeah. And it's a matter of means. It's not like these schools being irresponsible. It's just that they just can't, you can't do it. You just can't, they don't have the resources to be able to test to scale, at the scale of a Big Ten school. It's just impossible. So yeah, like, Michigan and Michigan State might run into some things, but it is far more likely for it to be, something that pops up on Oakland's end or something that pops up on EMU's end or Bowling Green, like it's just going to be, that's the greater likelihood. And that's just kind of what everyone's dealing with though. So, interesting story. So we're recording this at like 7:00 on Monday. We have an evening pod. Did you get a beer for this one, Dylan?
yeah, I got my
What do you got?
for Noel here. It's probably my second favorite Christmas beer. That's where
Excellent.
I'm at with it.
I got
What are you drinking over there?
I got Distorter Porter from Greenbush.
Oh.
It's a little Michigan beer. It's delicious.
All right.
High recommendation. And I'm actually now just seeing it in stores out here for the first time. I think Greenbush is like they're mainly based out of Chicago, but they have a spot out in like kind of like the southwest side of Michigan. I went to their little shop once. It was sweet. It's kind of out by like Journeyman Distillery. Giddy up.
All right. Put it on the list.
But interesting story that literally just came out from Jeff Goodman, I don't know, hour or two ago about some new, not protocols, I guess, but procedures from the Big Ten. Do you want to run through those real quick and just kind of touch on them?
Yeah, the big takeaways are just that the Big Ten, I know they were criticized a lot on the football side of things for taking their time to get to playing a season, but basically they have better protocols in place than a lot of other leagues as far as testing. A lot of other leagues, especially even high majors, are only testing 3 times a week. Big Ten teams have been testing daily for weeks. That means that when a Big Ten team has a positive, similar situation to like Michigan State, right? Tom Izzo tested positive. That didn't require a shutdown. Everyone else can actually test out of a shutdown, essentially. So if you continue to test negative daily, you're cleared to continue going on because you've been testing every day. So that should bode well for, I think, Big Ten play, just that they're going to have these protocols in place. The other big news piece in there was that they are working on hiring, I think he said 15 exclusive officials that will just do Big Ten games, and that they're really worried about. I think Brad Underwood was cited in there as saying officials could be kind of the biggest super spreader because they're going around, they're traveling to all these places, they're flying commercial, who knows what. And Big Ten wants to just lock down essentially an exclusive crew, and it's a really smart idea. They have the means to do it. Mm-hmm. Who would be your first draft pick for the exclusive Big Ten rep? It's got to be Bo, right?
Absolutely has to be Bo. Or who's my man? I can't believe I'm blanking on his name.
Terry Weimer.
Nah, the former cop from Pittsburgh. He now lives out in Arizona, but he still does Big Ten games. Little short guy.
Scarotto? Larry?
Yeah, Larry.
Yeah. It's going to be a whole crew. Our DJ Carsonson might get in there. All of our favorites. I'm worried some are going to get cut out of the loop. I mean,
we got to get Rick Boyages on this pod and start picking his brain a little bit on what he's thinking for these draft picks.
Yeah, I mean, that's big time. And I wonder if other leagues, I assume other leagues will kind of have to follow in a sense because these guys usually do other conferences, right? So if you're locking down 15 refs, that's a pretty good number. Mm-hmm. A lot of those guys are usually doing ACC or Big East schemes too. So
yeah,
be interesting how that works. I assume it'll start kind of around conference play, but I don't know.
And I would think by locking them down, you can then kind of strategically position these guys in, certain spots. You can have someone kind of just based, like you could have someone based right in, Ann Arbor, essentially. And okay, we're going to have you doing Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State. These are drivable spots, and then you're in one hotel room. We're putting you up. You're not doing anything other than that, right? Yep. As opposed to what you were saying. Like, I don't know if people understand, some of these guys are doing 5 games a week. They're all over the place, and they got to eat. So they're stopping in their car at, whatever rest stop or some shit. And you're right. All it takes is one, Yeah.
Every year, Ken Pom kind of tallies up the guys, like especially in these early season games, guys will work almost 30 days in a row, going between different tournaments, different sides of the country, foreign countries. Just like, it's insane where some of these guys go, and they're all technically independent contractors. So they're picking up any business they can. So if the Paradise Jam in the Virgin Islands wants to write you a check, well, hop on a plane. And then if you want to have to work a game in Vegas the next day, figure it out. So I don't think that obviously is not really COVID friendly. So it does make a lot of sense on the Big Ten's part. And it'll be interesting how they figure that out moving forward.
How excited are you for the stat tracker or whatever it's called to pop up on Wednesday with your referees assigned for Michigan Bowling Green?
I'm here for it. I'm a little worried because they changed the stat tracker layouts. I got a lot of fixing to do, but I can't do it until they start the season. So got 4 factors graphs to be made, all sorts of things that we need to get cleaned up before 4 o'clock on Wednesday. Doing
the Lord's work over there. Well, this is a good introduction to Michigan Bowling Green. We're going to talk about this one first because it's a better game. If anything, it's like if I were in the basketball office over at Michigan, I think I'd be feeling a little uneasy about this game. Bowling Green coming off its second straight 20-win season, went 12-6 in the MAC for a second straight year in a row. I think 4 of the 5 leading scorers are returning, 2 all-MAC selections. They got real players, and they were a team that, had NCAA tournament aspirations the last 2 years and certainly do again this year. They're probably the favorite in the MAC, right?
Yeah, I think the MAC is supposed to be pretty tight, but I do think they're probably one of the 2 or 3 teams that people think can win that league. I think this is a team that expects to go to the NCAA tournament this year. Justin Turner is their go-to guy. He was a grad transfer who was on the market, had a bunch of high major offers. Michigan was interested, Iowa State, Marquette, a bunch of schools. Missouri. He ended up going, he's from Detroit. He ended up going back to Bowling Green to just run it back for one more year, which you rarely see that. Like, you could go play high major ball and you're just going to stay at Bowling Green. That says something about, I guess, how good they might think that team can be, right? Probably better than Missouri, honestly. So I don't blame him completely in that sense. But he's really good. And, I mean, this team is going to test you. Like, they have dudes who can play, right? They're going to test you. Anything you might worry about your defense, like, you might worry about defending ball screens against this team. They have guys who can put 25 up in a game, even against Michigan or whoever else, especially in an empty gym, right? I mean, that's the thing. There's so much unknown. And this team, I know the Ken Pom spread's like 18 points, but and I would be a little nervous if I was Michigan on that side of things, just because you're used to opening with the team that's like in the MEAC or the SWAC, who you're going to beat by 40. Right. This is a team that can easily keep a game around 8-10 points, and then at that point, anything can happen down the stretch.
Yeah. And they were 12-3 in the MAC at one point last year before going on a late skid. They lost 3 in a row. Kind of left a bad taste in the mouth, but it's an interesting place. Michael Huger, right? His name? Michael Huger. I think he played there back in the day. But he's in like his 5th or 6th year, right? So he got in, he's rebuilt it. Now it's a thing, it's a program. So they have their culture and all that shit, right? Like it's a real program. It's not a layup by any means. What is going to be Michigan's starting lineup?
Ooh, that's
right into it, man.
Yeah. So I guess the biggest data point we have to work off of is playing time in their intra-squad scrimmage, which is obviously tricky because you're splitting the team in half. But I think that's still confirmed a few things as far as what we're going to see. I think it's easy to start with Franz Wagner and Isaiah Livers. They're going to start, right? That's 2. I think Hunter Dickinson has to start. My biggest takeaway looking at that scrimmage box score was that Dickinson's team dominated in the paint against Austin Davis's team. Austin Davis fouled out in 24 minutes. Dickinson played 33 minutes. The team, Dickinson and Brandon John's team, outscored them 48-26 in the paint. Like, right. There was some talk kind of in these Zoom press conferences of like, oh, maybe Dickinson's on a gradual climb, not a rocket ship or whatever. I think Phil Martelli said, he's too good not to play and play a lot. I think you just have to, anywhere this team's going depends on him. So I'll start with Hunter Dickinson at the 5, Isaiah Livers at the 4, Franz at the 3, Eli Brooks at the 2, and Mike Smith at point guard. You buying or selling that lineup?
I'm really torn on if they're going to go with that. The only other option is starting Sean D. Brown and going with with Eli as at the 1, and going from there. I would guess
those would be it's one of the transfers has to start essentially.
Right. I have no idea what is going to be the final plan on it. Let's talk a little bit about the scrimmage.
All right.
Just for anyone that's kind of getting caught up on this stuff. I know you had a good post on Hoops about it, kind of breaking down what you were able to glean. So Mike Smith, 32 minutes played, 6 for 14 shooting, made both of his threes, 14 points, 3 assists, 2 turnovers, and committed 4 fouls.
3 fouls. Drew 4 fouls.
Sorry, drew 4, committed 3. Does that 6 for 14 number get you at all? Because let's just backtrack, right? People have said, Mike Smith isn't going to play the way he did at Columbia. It's going to be a different deal, blah, 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 blah. And I think everyone buys that and agrees with that and things like that. And like at one point, I think I had like Martelli say to me for my all-season preview, like, look, if Mike Smith is shooting the way that he did at Columbia, we're not going to be very good. And that makes sense because there's that much talent on the team. There's no reason for him to take that many shots.
Well, it's also intra-squad scrimmage. I
understand. I'm just saying, like, but if you're trying to get him into different habits and he's, goes out and puts up 14 shots, that's my question. Like, what do you make of that? I'm not trying to criticize the guy.
No,
I know
I just like
you're on the Mike Smith defense.
You have to look at the stats.
Club.
For me, the biggest question about that box score from Mike Smith is that Eli Brooks went 7 of 11 from the floor and was 6 of 10 on twos, right? Like if Eli Brooks is shooting 10 twos and getting to the basket, that's just kind of reinforces what we're saying about Mike Smith might not be a very good defender at this level. Eli Brooks is not really the shiftiest guy. He's not really. How many games did Eli Brooks take 10 twos last year and make over half of them? So I think that's the first thing I looked at. I'm not going to look at shooting numbers and say something crazy. I mean, to me, what it looks like is that team didn't really have anyone else to create inside. Sean D. Brown was 4 of 7 from 3, but he was 2 of 8 on twos. Right. Isaiah Livers was 3 of 7 on threes, but he only took 4 2-pointers. So Zeb Jackson took some twos. Austin Davis, when he was on the floor, took some twos, but that team didn't really have a lot of creators. So I think you can get a little bogged down in the stats of this game just because it's a split squad scrimmage, right?
Fair.
So if you're taking 14 shots with half, it's kind of skewed, right? You can't say he's going to just go out chucking up shots. I mean, would you like him to have 8 assists and 2 shot attempts and say, oh man, he's just ready to be a pass first point guard and run the team? Yeah, but I don't know that you can really expect that when it's not like he's playing with, I don't know. That's where I come down on that.
Right. I mean, I know when I looked at that box score, I said Mike Smith took more shots than Isaiah Livers.
Is that more of an indictment on Mike Smith or Isaiah Livers?
Right. Was Isaiah Livers standing there thinking he was still playing with Xavier Simpson?
And Isaiah Livers had 6 assists. And is that going to tell me that he's a creator now and a playmaker? Or is it going to tell me he had 5 dump off passes to Austin Davis? That's what we just don't know when we look at a box score, right?
Right.
And that's tough. And especially in the split squad scrimmage where it's so skewed.
I would say the other thing that jumped out to me, it was, number 1 was probably Dickinson's line, and more so the fact that he played 33 minutes. But then the other one's Brandon Johns playing alongside Dickinson. Went 6 for 10, 7 boards, 4 offensive boards, 14 points, no turnovers, and had the best plus minus of anyone on the court for the game.
Yeah, and I think Johns is a huge reason why that team kind of dominated inside, right? You look at what he can do.
Didn't attempt a three.
As an energy guy around the basket. He had 4 offensive rebounds. Everyone else in the game had combined, 6 total? And so he had like half the offensive rebound. Like he's the only real offensive rebounder on this team. He's the only – there's a role for him if he can do all of that, especially if you're going to try to slide Isaiah Livers down a little bit, stuff like that. I still think to make the most impact, Johns has to play the 5 and – do some of that at center also, but I thought it was telling that he was able to do that. And that's an impressive stat line where I don't think it was really a guarantee that he would win that battle. I mean,
yeah,
I assume Isaiah Livers probably was guarding Franz quite often, or at least at times. So I don't know how those matchups kind of cross fit together, but definitely stood out for me. Franz Wagner's stat line, obviously impressive.
Yeah, and I feel like you expect it from Franz. But I want to talk more about Johns. Like,
all right.
I find it really interesting what scenarios can kind of come out from him being, if he's ready to take a step forward, what scenarios can come out of it, because, like Hunter Dickinson could be really good and he's 7'2" and he's 260 pounds and like he's a force. It's not just like the idea of Johns as the small ball 5. We've kind of seen it as, well, Dickinson can't play 40 minutes, so it's kind of a luxury to have, so you don't have to maybe resort to Austin Davis or whatever. But if Brandon Johns is going to play at a level where like you're like, shit, like you need to play him like 20 minutes a game or something like that. What that could end up doing for the rest of the rotation, and especially it gets into that Franz at the 2 conversation where suddenly you just have this massive team where if you have Brooks or Smith at the 1, Franz at the 2, Shawnee, Brown, or Livers at the 3, and then Johns and Dickinson. I mean, that'd be quite a team to look at. I know you're going to be upset about the dribbling, but
No. So,
but the point remains.
So it's interesting because I think there are levels to it. I think if Johns can do all that and play with energy and be that guy, either at the 4 or the 5, I think that gives you something unique and really, not that it's because you don't have to play Austin Davis, it's because it can be an entirely different way to attack a team. Sure. I mean, you literally have a massive 7'2" post man who you can throw the ball into. He can take it up in one hand and then whip a pass across the court. Yep. And then you have to figure out how to guard that. And then you can go to another guy who's going to space the floor, offensive rebound, can put it on the floor and drive by you. Those are so different. It's basically you can play 2 different ways from one TV timeout to the next. So I actually think it's not really about avoiding other options. It's that it gives you an entirely different way to play with Johns at the 5. That's why I'm most interested in that. And I think it even makes everyone else better where you can switch 1 through 5 almost.
Yep.
In terms of like, that'll just make it easier to get away with even substandard defense from Isaiah Livers, who's not really a great perimeter guy. But if you're switching, it just gives you a whole different look. At the 4, I do think early on, there's just a role for him to play as Isaiah Livers backup, right? If he's going to have to take that chance and excel there. And if he does, I think what we see in this box score is that Franz Wagner played the 2 on this lineup, right? I mean, if you look at who was on his team, he was basically the 2 guard that whole game, and he was getting to the basket and scoring, not really racking up assists, but that's there. So I think offensively...
Well, it looks like it was probably split, right? Because Franz played 36 minutes, but then Nunez played 25.
Is Nunez a 2?
Where else is he?
I would say, either way, if you're playing the 2 or the 3 next to Nunez, you can play the 2. That's what I would put it as. It's not like Adrian Nunez is running offense at the 2. My point is just that I think Franz can do that offensively, and I think Sean D can do some of that defensively where he can pick up some of the slack that maybe guard quicker guys that Franz Wagner can't guard. And that gives you sort of that extra flexibility to make those big lineups happen. And then the key is just going to be, can you create an advantage, right? You can be long and do all these things, but you have to actually make it mean something offensively and defensively to make it count. Is that a zone look? Is that just that's what you have to figure out, I think, as far as like, it's one thing to be big, but you have to, can you get a bunch of deflections? Can you get a bunch of rebounds? Are you going to start the break from any position? Like, what are you going to do to stand out in that look?
Yeah. And it's going to be so the amount that people have talked about Franz on the offensive side, just scoring in such a variety of ways. And he's not a shooter. I mean, we think of him as, a good 3-point shooter, and he is, but like, it seems like he's taken a big step forward in terms of not only getting to his spots to take his little layups and runners and scoop shots and all this, but he's getting them off. And I think that speaks a lot to how much stronger he is reported to be, or whatever, like he went 9 for 13 on twos in this game. And was playing opposite a team that had, I would guess he was checked by Shawnee Brown for much of this game.
Brown
would be my guess, right?
I would think.
And did his thing. So plus 8 rebounds on the defensive side, and you don't know what they looked like. But
the Michigan's wings are going to be really good. I mean, it's a rebounding unit, right? Isaiah Livers had 9 defensive boards. Franz had 8. Shondi had 6. And Terrence Williams had 10. And those are all defensive boards. So I think it's going to have to be, that's one of the ways you can create an advantage is, all right, my wings can get the ball off the glass, and then they can just start the break.
And go.
You'd be waiting for Hunter Dickinson. But
they took a big step forward last year in terms of transitioning from Beeline to Juwan Howard, and in their tempo, right? What were they last year? They were 150th in the country. The year before, they were 317th, right? So, they weren't fast per se, but that's because, you were still Xavier Simpson's team.
And you're still playing Wisconsin and some of these teams in the Big Ten.
But do you think there will be, because of the lineups that you have, and because it's not, their best weapon was still getting into half-court offense last year because of Xavier Simpson's efficiency and just the way you play, right? Do you think it'll be looking to score faster this year?
I think you're always looking to score fast. I think one of the reasons, like, they made a huge jump in tempo, and the transition defense was still pretty good last year. So your overall tempo number is going to come down to offense and defense. So if you're great on transition defense, and like you look at the blue team in this game, they didn't give up any fast break points. Like, that's a good stat to see. So I think being able to still control a game while being aggressive in transition is important. So I definitely think they could be. Some of it still probably comes down to, like, is Mike Smith comfortable in that sort of a game distributing? I don't know if Eli Brooks really is either. So you might worry about the guards. But Franz is great in transition. Isaiah is great in transition. You want those guys to get out and go. I guess the other big issue when you look at this box score is, like, it's an inter-squad scrimmage, but you can feel great about all these offensive things, but you might be worried about the defense a little bit, I would say. Both teams shot the ball really well. Like, you're going up and down against yourself, so who really knows what it means? But I think this team's going to be way better offensively than defensively, just based on what we know about them.
I would agree with that. I would definitely agree. I mean, your 2 best players, Livers is a marginal defender, and Franz is like an interesting defensive player, right? I wouldn't say that he's like a good defender, but his length, right, can create issues, and he can play. I don't know how engaged he is. I don't think he's like a slap the floor, I'm going to lock your ass down type guy, like mindset. You know what I mean? But he's a good defender because of his physical attributes.
Your point guard's shorter than both of us, and your center is going to be an issue defensively. So those are probably, and you literally are replacing guys who were grizzled veterans who had been great defensive players for years in the Big Ten. That's the real drop off. So it's interesting. I mean, it's funny. Like, if you go back and read what we probably said after the secret scrimmage last year against Detroit, like, who knows? I mean, anything this early in the season is just bullshit in the end. So
I do wonder if that the defensive question, though, can maybe crack some doors for for a Johns for a Terrence Williams. Maybe. I don't know. Terrence Williams seems like one of these guys who is like an engaged physical defender, rebound, do the dirty work type guy. And then Johns, I wouldn't say, he's had his issues in ball screen defense and doing other things and being out of position, but he erases mistakes because he's the only real true, although I guess Dickinson's a rim protector because he's 7'2". He's a presence at the rim.
Johns will probably block twice as many shots as anyone else on the team this year. So yes, that's another reason the small ball works nicely. Dickinson is not really getting up and down to block many shots. He can wall up around the basket, big, but Johns gives you rim protection in a way that no one else on the team does at this point. Yeah,
he's the only thing resembling a weak side defender, certainly down there. Do you have anything more? So give me real quick your three things that you want to watch for in this game. I'll give you mine.
Ball screen defense. Bowling Green's gonna be spreading Michigan out, gonna put them in ball screens. It's gonna be. I expect Hunter Dickinson to struggle at some point. I also think he'll probably get his fair share of baskets out of those looks. I want to see how the offense plays or who the offense plays through. Like if you're going to play through Franz Wagner, what does that really look like? What kind of sets are you dialing up? Is it still going to be a lot of kind of deliberate ball screen offense? Are you going to run something different? Like just seeing the first 10 possessions of what Michigan wants to do offensively, I think will be really interesting in the half court. And then I want to see basically how many minutes Hunter Dickinson can play.
Yeah.
And I think he's such a swing piece for this team as far as can he get up and down in a game like this? Can he be passable defensively? And if he can, I think his offensive skill and talent is really through the roof. I think his ability to make plays out of the post, not just for himself, but for other people, could be a real unheralded, kind of underrated aspect of why this team could be better offensively and something they just didn't have last year.
Yeah. So you took some of mine. Ball screen defense was definitely number one. And Dickinson, obviously, but I'll give you
Mike Smith.
Yeah. Smith and Eli Brooks. I just want to see Mike Smith on the court, right, amongst these guys and just see how his size translates, see what he can and can't do, from based on what we saw on video from Columbia to what is actually can transfer over to this setting. Because it was pretty clear, if you remember back, like Jerron Simmons, like the first 3, 4, 5 games of that year, you're like, this ain't it, right? Like this is not going to be the guy who is just stepping in and running the point guard for 34 minutes and just an easy transfer over from Derek Walton. Like it was glaring pretty early. And I think with Mike Smith, it'll be the same thing.
Yeah. I mean,
whether for good or bad, right?
That was the year that they benched. So Xavier started that year, right? And then they benched him overnight after the loss to LSU and went with Eli Brooks. Jerron Simmons wasn't really even in the conversation. And that was the 4th or 5th game of the year in Maui. So it was very clear. And even beyond how they play or how Mike Smith plays or how Eli plays, how they're used is going to tell you what the coaching staff feels, right?
Sure. Yeah. And that would get into rotation stuff. Is going to be really interesting because this isn't a typical non-conference schedule. You don't have 12 games or whatever to work some things out. Michigan's playing basically like the minimum allotted amount, right? And this isn't play 2 or 3 bullshit games and then go to Maui or the Bahamas and then play real games because you get your dress rehearsal. It's not that. Like this game counts, and you don't have that many of them, so they need to play. And I think like the rotation stuff, like we'll get a pretty clear picture of what is kind of going on in the staff's mind early on here.
I think that's 2. You have a third?
I'll go with Eli. Is it just the same Eli Brooks, or is it, is he really because we've never seen him play without Xavier Simpson. So we have our very clear picture in our minds of what Eli Brooks is. But he can't be only that now. So where is he in being something different? I have no idea. We haven't seen anything. But it can't just be what it was because he's not in that role.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy who's going to play 35 minutes a game.
We haven't seen anyone on this team play without Xavier Simpson.
Exactly.
That's going to be a litmus test for a lot of guys.
But I wouldn't expect. I don't think there's any real chance of like we know what Franz Wagner is with or without Xavier Simpson. We know what Isaiah Livers is, frankly, with and without Xavier Simpson. Like Eli Brooks with the ball in his hands in that type of spot is something we don't know.
That's fair. I think one extra I'd throw in: how deep does Juwan go in his bench? Like, is Terrence Williams in the rotation? Is Zeb Jackson in the rotation?
I'd be stunned if Terrence Williams is not in the rotation.
I think that's good. It's just so hard to figure out where.
Right.
Everyone you want to put in the rotation, basically Williams and Johns, plays the same damn position. So you're kind of stuck with all these fours, right? So that'll be fascinating. Williams is a guy who just seems like he'll produce if you put him out there. He'll make kind of winning plays along the way. So I love his game. I've always loved his film. I wish he was a little bit taller and his arms were a little bit longer, and I think he could actually be a candidate to be a small ball 5, but I just don't know if he's quite long enough to actually succeed in that role.
It's fair. I thought it was interesting in the scrimmage that Jace Howard and Zeb Jackson were on the same team, and Jace Howard played more minutes than Zeb Jackson.
Fair.
That is an interesting development.
Zeb had been hurt though, right?
That's
I know Martelli said
stinger
last week that he had a stinger and had been kind of in and out and limited.
Right.
Yeah, that team's bench was not particularly stacked. So
not at all. But I wouldn't draw too much from it, but just an interesting thing. All right. Let's get into some Michigan State. This is great, by the way. I'm so glad to be talking about games and stuff.
I just hope that none of these games have been canceled while we're recording this podcast. That's fine.
Got eyes on the phone. Don't worry. All right. Michigan State, Eastern Michigan, 6:00, Breslin Center, Wednesday night.
Before you start, do you remember the last time Michigan State played Eastern Michigan? It was the moving screen doubleheader.
Is that right?
Yeah. How much the world has changed since then.
I think it was approximately 8 years ago.
It feels like longer.
EMU coming off a 16-16 season, big step back probably for old Coach Murphy. They went 6-12 in the MAC. He's in year 9 there, by the way. And year 8 wasn't good because they couldn't shoot. It's ranked 346th in the country in three-point shooting, 28% as a team, just remarkably bad. But you know what you're getting with EMU, right? They run out the zone. It's the 2-3 Boeheim Syracuse zone at very much a MAC level. And without Syracuse athletes, got some talent though coming in. So, last year's different because they bring some guys back, but they add 2 pieces. One, Drew Lauder, Holy Cross transfer, Ann Arbor Pioneer representing Dillon. Had a really nice first half of his freshman year at Holy Cross, then transferred out. Had some looks from higher majors and went to EMU, presumably to be close to home, I would guess.
Mm-hmm. And get a waiver. Bryce McBride, a JUCO, made 99 threes as a JUCO player. From what I can gather from my blue ribbon preview research, which is at the highest level, I imagine that's the starting backcourt with the remnants of last year's team. I don't know how much they really stack up in the MAC, but that's your EMU synopsis there. Yeah, they finished 349th in three-point percentage last year. They shot 26.7% from three. Michigan State beat them 101-48 last year at the Breslin Center. Basically, the 2-3 zone doesn't work great if you just can't ever score and just give up transition opportunities the other way. So if you run past the zone, it's always a little more effective than trying to shoot over it. But I mean, I don't see, like, I think Bowling Green could give Michigan a challenge. I don't really see this being a remotely close game.
No.
Is there anything to even, like, I guess you can kind of see how the backcourt plays against the zone and what kind of composure, because like so much of Michigan State is like, oh, well, Cassius Winston will figure out the zone. So that's different, but this isn't it's not like you're playing Syracuse right now, right? Like it's just not the same.
This game has 45 transition points for Michigan State written all over it and a route, I would think.
I feel like that. I guess, and it's crazy because the spread is only, like the Ken Palm spread is only 17, which is only a couple of points above the Michigan Bowling Green spread, and Ken Palm has them at 155th. I just don't completely see it. I think what you can learn in a game like this from Michigan State, though, is just who Izzo trusts and how he sees the rotation right now. Obviously, he just got back to practice over the weekend, so apparently that's off film. But you learn so much about just who they're going to try out there and who's going to play where and what works and what doesn't. You still can take a lot, I think, from the game. I just don't see it being particularly close. I don't know if we have to focus much on Eastern.
No. I mean, I think it's far more like I want to see Rocket Watts' patience level with the ball in his hands, right? It's the conversation we've had all summer. He's not going to be rewired, but is he, how much is he playing at the one? How much is he playing alongside Foster? How much, when he is at the one, is he distributing the ball? I asked him, he was on a call today, and I go, do you feel like you have to change your instincts? And he was like, no, absolutely not. So I was like, there you go. Let's see how this goes. This is going to be fascinating, right? So between the one or even the guard rotation as a whole, right, with Langford, like how much is Langford going? Are they going to try to keep him limited to 15, 20 minutes, or are they just going to let him go? And then the 5 spot. And then the other thing would be I want to see how much they play through Hauser, but that's really hard because it's, the going against a 2-3 zone, we'll kind of discombobulate all of that in terms of perception.
Do you have a predicted starting lineup for Michigan State?
I will say
this is
Watts,
good stuff.
Watts, Langford, Henry, Hauser, and I'll take a wild guess and say Marble at the 5.
It's a bowl. Does the starter for Michigan State at the 5 play the most minutes? That's my question. I'm most fascinated. I know everyone's talking about Rocket Watts, but I want to see how the big men play and who actually looks good, right? Because I think they're all going to get chances.
See, I'm interested in seeing I'm not ready to draw big conclusions from it right now, because I think at the end of the day, it's going to boil down to what we've talked about a couple times here, and that the ceiling, and, in conversation with Izzo, like he's basically admitted this, like the ceiling is Matty Sissoko starting at the 5 and being your best 5. That's not going to be the case though on November 25th. So it's, to me, in terms of what Michigan State is, the 5 right now is kind of a moot point.
Okay. I'll buy that. But I need to see Rocket Watts against good teams. I think you can learn more about, like, I know Rocket Watts can put 30 on Eastern Michigan. He could probably do that with, like, that's just, we know he has that.
Right.
I want to see him against Notre Dame. I want to see him against Duke.
Yes.
I think there are data points that you can take from how Michigan State's bigs play early in the year, just based on, we don't know as much about them. Like, how many games did Julius Marble even play double digit minutes last year? It's if he starts and he plays 25 minutes, like, that's a data point we just don't have on him. We've seen what Watts can do. I guess I'm also curious where Gabe Brown comes up in Gabe Brown and Malik Hall. Like, those guys I think are good enough to be starters in one world, but they're also kind of at risk, similar to Brandon Johns, of maybe getting squeezed out of the rotation a bit once you have Aaron Henry and Josh Langford back and all these different pieces, especially if Rocket's going to play more minutes at the 2, all of a sudden there's just a lot fewer minutes for everyone else. So that'll be interesting, I think, to see.
Yeah. And like, this game will tell you nothing on that, because if it's if it goes the way we expect it to, right? Everyone's going to play 22 minutes. Yeah. It's the Notre Dame game, like Michigan State their schedule is great because we're going to find out we're going to get some definitive stuff pretty early here with Notre Dame, with Virginia, with Duke, Michigan, and I don't even have it off the top of my head, but you got to wait here a second,
for NC
right?
State and UCF. Those are the only real games.
And they're neither. NC State's what, a borderline bubble team coming?
Yeah,
this
NC
year?
State has some dudes.
They don't play either. They don't play Central Florida until December 6th, and they play NC State 3 days later. I don't know. No disrespect to Greg Campy in Oakland, but yeah, I don't know how much we're going to really learn about them.
Yeah, in Oakland, I think
they got
9 or 10 guys had COVID and they were shut down for 3 weeks. And I think Greg Campy said 0-7 would be a good start for them. So
that's why Greg Campy's a legend right there.
But let's get back to Michigan State.
Yeah.
Usually you would have you would have seen practice and stuff leading up to the season.
Right.
Like, do you feel like you're flying blind a little bit with Michigan State? Are there takeaways? Like, what should we know? Like, I'm not around. Like, I don't know. I'm not on all the Zoom calls. Are there any kind of preseason takeaways? Like, man, people are higher on so-and-so than I'd expect, or
I mean, I think the Hauser thing is probably, the question is it a hype train or is it legit? And we'll, find out soon enough. I mean, when everything I hear is just glowing praise and all that stuff, it's when it's coming from people that like I know and respect, it's you're not blowing smoke up my ass, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you're saying, and I've seen him with my 2 eyes in practice and stuff like that. If he's just this kind of all things, on the offensive side of the floor in terms of distributing, in terms of shooting, in terms of doing a bunch of stuff, what does that look like? I mean, you're going away from, similar to Michigan, this point guard situation that everything was just dictated by Cassius Winston between the years, and the decisions that he would make out of every ball screen and every shot stemmed from him. Well, now you have a non-traditional point guard, and now you're going to be running stuff through the high post and things like that. They're going to be able to run. We know that, but I want to see them in half court. And the problem is that they're playing a fucking zone team in the opener, which is just useless.
Yeah.
Like, it's like when you show up for like an AAU game, like to scout somewhere, like to try to watch someone and the opponent's running zone. And you're like, well, great. This is a complete waste of time.
Yeah. And I also worry that like Michigan State just over the years is so good at running crappy teams out of the building with their just transition offense.
Yeah.
And then you just like, okay, Rocky Watts can throw an alley-oop and open gym. That doesn't tell us shit. Right. So here we are. That's a good ability to have, and it all works out nicely, but it doesn't tell you really anything you didn't already know.
Yeah. But like there are things to, like, watching Josh Langford run and jump is an important thing, because I still have no idea if, like, is Josh Langford all right, how about this? If I say over under 10 field goal attempts a game for Josh Langford, what are you taking?
Sounds high. I want to go under.
He was taking 15 for the last time he was on the court.
All right. The last time he was on the court, it was like ages ago. So it's just so hard to figure out.
That's my point. That's my point.
Is he that guy? Is he not that guy? I guess we'll find out pretty quick, right? Like,
I would think. I
mean, the quotes I've seen are that he's healthy as can be and like as close to 100% he's going to get. So I assume they're going to. I haven't heard. Have they talked about a minutes limit or a
no? So
limit at all?
I forget who asked, but Langford was asked about it today. I think Matt Charbonneau asked, and he basically was like, "Not that I know of. I'm just going out there and playing and seeing, what it is." And so it wasn't now that doesn't mean the coaching staff privately doesn't have we're not playing him more than 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's going to be, it feels like we're acting like there's nothing you can really take from it, but there are a lot of moving pieces for Michigan State. Like, I think there's almost more questions about how the rotation plays out for Michigan State than Michigan in a way, just because there's just so many bodies on that roster, and it's not just bodies; they're actual guys who can play. Like, there's a chance Marcus Bingham's the starting center and is playing 25 minutes a night, right? Like, he could be that guy. He has that. It's just so hard to see how that all plays out.
And like the stupid zone can goad you into dumb shots, right?
I thought you were going to say dumb lineups, but we'll save that.
Probably that. Oh, well played. And like, there are bad things that could happen. Like Rocket Watts could go out there and go, 3 for 14, and just like anytime because you're playing the zone, right? Anytime he finds himself wide open 3 feet behind the 3-point line, he just chucks it, and you're like, that's not what you need. You know what I mean? Like,
were you at that 45-42 game in Ann Arbor 5 years ago? That's probably everything you need to know about what Eastern Michigan zone can do, right? That was one of the worst basketball games I've ever seen in my life, and so I definitely agree.
Was that before or after the NJIT game?
It was the game after it.
The second
complete
one.
Crisis of confidence. Just disastrous.
Unbelievable.
But like, yeah, that can happen in Eastern Michigan. Like, I don't know if this team has the same kind of length really to be that great of a zone defense, but it can happen with this sort of setup. And if you don't come ready to play and prepared to play against that, and Michigan State doesn't have maybe the same group, like, you were never going to not be prepared with Cassius Winston and Xavier Tillman, but maybe that looks a little different when you got guys who are a little newer to their roles, right?
Yeah. And that's always what these games are. The whole, that's why every fucking story written out of these games is like, who accepts what roles, right? No one loves, like, the November and stories about roles are just a never-ending tradition in college basketball. I'm as guilty as anybody, by the way. But
yeah, anything else you have to get off your chest here? Man.
Oh, shit.
We're going to analyze some golf stories next, or what?
Oh, don't break down my golf stories. They're so bad. What else you got?
What do you got? Like, what's the thing you'll watch for in these first few weeks of Michigan State that would say, all right, I think they are going to win the Big Ten, or all right, maybe this is going to be a long year? Is there one kind of dynamic that stands out? Is it Hauser?
That's so hard. That's a great question, though. Because there's so many, like, they have so many guys. They've got 3 different dudes that if they ended up first team all Big Ten, I wouldn't be shocked, right? And not many teams can say that. 3 is a lot. But it probably has to be Watts, because there's just no real alternative at the 1. And, like, Foster Loyer, I think he can be a very capable backup point guard, and that's fine. But, like, Rocket Watts needs to be somewhat of a point guard. And what does that look like? I think that's just the top question with a bullet.
Yeah, for me, it's Hauser, just because I haven't really seen him in this system. Whereas Watts, I have a lot of opinions already, so it'll take more to sway my view one way or the other. But if Hauser's going to be this guy, I know you picked him on the All Big Ten first team. Like, if he's that guy, that could change a whole lot for what Michigan State looks like. And if they're going to, like, if he's leading the team in field goal attempts, and it's not just the product of, like, catch and shoot zone looks, but like, he's the go-to kind of high usage guy in that offense, that could be something that I think, like, oh, well, shit, that might work, or, well, that didn't really work. I think that's where I'll look first. It's been so long since he's played, and I do think I was on Alex's pod, and he was questioning your pick of Joey Hauser. And I know I questioned on our pod, but I told him, like, look, sit-out transfers can make a big difference. Charles Matthews looked like he couldn't play offensive basketball at Kentucky. Right. And then he was Michigan's kind of leading usage guy then 2 years later. So I just want to see what Hauser looks like. And I think that'll really shape, I guess, the early season narrative of where Michigan State needs to go.
Yeah, Hauser was basically taking, like, I think anywhere from like 8 to 12 shots a game for a Marquette team that was, they were like a 5 seed, I think, that year. I know he was the third option, but I would put his likely like field goal attempts between 12 and 15 a game on this team.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
Who do you think leads Michigan State in assists game 1 and for the year?
Shit, that's really hard.
Which is a crazy thing to. I mean, this is a team that was first in the country in percentage of assisted field goals last year, and one guy had just about all of them. So
right. I mean, it's got to be Hauser or Watts.
I wouldn't have said.
I think
either
I'd be
of those
more.
guys.
Oh, really? Who, Henry?
Yeah, that would be my pick. I've seen Aaron Henry pass the ball about 500 times more than Rocket Watts.
But it's all like I feel like the passes that Henry makes are more so like hockey assists. I don't think of him being a guy who like makes passes that puts guys in position to score, you know? I think I'd say Hauser. And like part of that's the reason like I put him on this thing. The first team where I'm like Michigan State's going to finish. I think Michigan State's going to finish top 3 in the league. And if Hauser's averaging 15, 8 or let's say 15 and 16, 7 boards and 5 assists a game, why wouldn't he be first team all league? Right?
If you put it that way. Yeah, well, shit. That's like if Eli Brooks averages 15 and 8. Like, no, but it's just crazy because that looks completely different than a team that's built around Rocket, for example, or Aaron Henry, like, I think has some playmaking ability. Like, what makes Aaron Henry the best player is probably putting the ball in his hands more often, right? He's not going to just stand in the corner and shoot. Like, it's so fascinating to me, all these moving pieces where Josh Langford and Gabe Brown are guys you do just put in the corner and they can shoot and run off screens, whatever else. They're not going to be your playmakers. Foster Lawyer, again, he's going to be more of a shooter than an actual creator for other people. He can move the ball and set things up. Like, what does a Michigan State offense look like that plays through its 4-man? Like, is that like the last time we saw that was what, Draymond Green? Like
Draymond, yeah.
So Joey Hauser's Draymond Green now? Like, I don't know.
Well, you said that. I didn't say that.
No, but I'm just saying, like, that's the only time we've seen that sort of setup for Michigan State.
Yeah, but they're also, they're going to do what's best.
Yeah,
they're not going to force feed Rocket Watts into making reads out of ball screens. It's going to be Rocket Watts initiates the offense. There's going to be a lot of Aaron Henry as almost like point forward type thing. That's why I picked
him to be leading the team in assists. That's fair. That's what I see more. But I mean,
is he like hitting cutters and stuff like that with his passing?
Is Joey Hauser? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think Hauser can do that. I think Hauser can make a backdoor pass out of the high post. Like,
if Joey Hauser averages 5 assists a game, like, what
happens?
That's just, I don't know. We have to make some kind of bet. We'll do a socially distant alcohol bet. I don't know what the hell to do with that, but that just seems way too high to me. Like, he could be a really good passer and average 2.5 assists a game.
Sure. It's a high number, but
for a 4-man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's also going to play like 34 minutes a game.
Yeah, and so I guess that's my other question, Michigan State. Henry, Hauser, Langford, are those all mid-30 minutes a game guys?
Is Langford really going to be playing over 30 minutes a game? He hasn't played in 2 years.
If he's healthy.
I have no idea. I would put Watts. I would mention Watts before Langford. I'd say Watts, Henry, Hauser are, in my book, the only guys guaranteed playing 30 minutes plus a game.
That's fair. I just don't know. Like, there's so many guys. Is it a team where everyone plays 25 minutes a game?
Watts for his defense alone. I mean, shit. I mean, you put him at the 2 just to.
Yeah, I'll buy that. I'm just trying to figure out how the lineup breaks down because there's so many, like, you can't even talk about everyone on Michigan State's roster. It's kind of crazy, really. And but I'm not sure which kind of bench guy is good enough that you have to play him. Like, Gabe Brown could be awesome, or he could just be a forgotten guy at this point. So I don't know. What
it's the same thing with Malik Hall. Like Malik Hall could play a bunch of different positions and do a bunch
Joey
of things.
Hauser is playing 35 minutes a game.
Exactly. Like you're going to run into stuff, and like they're not going to sit Henry. So like what do you do with a guy like that? Do you think there's any chance you ever see them go small? Hauser at the 5.
I'm all for small ball.
I know you are.
It doesn't matter who. I'll argue that for any team. But like, yeah, the bigs are Thomas Kithier, Marcus Bingham, Julius Marble, and Matty Sissoko. One of those guys has to prove they need to play, or of course they'll go small. You're gonna like if the option late in the game is to go with Bingham or Josh Langford as an extra guy on the court, who are you going to pick? I don't know. Like, It's one thing to not go small when you have bigs who you want to play. I'm not convinced that any of those guys are guys you have to play.
Well, and the irony of it a little bit is that this would be a perfect game to play Hauser at. Playing against this zone would be a perfect spot to play Hauser.
Oh, yeah.
5.
I mean, I already have Joey Hauser dialed into my DraftKings team over here.
There you go.
He's cheap. If he's playing 35 minutes a game, I'm going to double down on that. But I think it makes sense. You play against like an Ohio State where Kyle Young's probably their starting center.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to are any of those bigs going to create an offensive advantage for you against a small 5?
Right.
Not really.
I agree.
You really think Julius Marble's going to start?
That's my guess. I have no idea what they're going to do.
He played double-digit minutes once last year against Charleston Southern. Now
they also had
okay.
Tillman.
All right, but other guys played double-digit. Like Marcus
he was
Bingham
behind.
played double-digit minutes a whole bunch. So you know what I mean? Marcus Bingham started a dozen games.
But part of that was like the mind game of trying to get Marcus Bingham to reach his something even remotely approaching his potential.
Yeah, but that game's not over.
We'll find out soon enough. We'll find out soon enough where it is.
I mean, he's on the roster. You still want him to get to that point, right?
You would think so, yes.
I would put my money on Kithier just because I feel like he seems like a guy who's going to be the guy you trust after 6 weeks of practice, but maybe not 6 weeks of games.
Yeah, I definitely would not start Bingham in this game because he inevitably is going to catch the ball open at the 3-point line.
Can't allow it.
Let that baby fly. And then it's all over again.
Fair enough. But not like, in so many ways, it makes sense to go with Malik Hall at the 4 and Hauser at the 5 if he can do it.
For sure.
I just have this vision or stereotype of Hauser as kind of soft already as a 4.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be how much of that has been worked out of him over the last 12 months and to be, let alone a 4, or let alone a 5, right? I mean, that's a whole different expectation.
All right. Before we get out of here, what Big Ten teams do you want to watch in the first week? That's going to also be one of the beautiful things of this week. Or if you want to go specific Big Ten players that you want to see, I'm sure you're just really juiced up to watch. I don't know, some obviously Iowa's defense.
I want to see Purdue's young guards. That game happens to be at the same time as the Michigan game, the Michigan State game, which is unfortunate. But obviously Eric Hunter's out, but Jaden Ivey and some other younger guys, I think, are going to have a real opportunity, and I want to see how they play.
Mm-hmm.
Not really many like great games to watch early, but I'm a little curious to see how Ohio State sets up and what that rotation looks like. I know they have some injuries and everything, but those are the two teams I'll probably watch most closely on Wednesday, other than Michigan and Michigan State, just because I think there's some more uncertainty there. How about you?
I've been going back and forth. Let's run through some of these games for the people out there.
We got our KenPom page up here.
So Wednesday, November 25th, right? The first Big Ten game of the year will be Nebraska McNeese State at noon, live from Pinnacle Bank Arena. Penn State Drexel, Maryland Old Dominion, Illinois, North Carolina A&M, Ohio State, Illinois State, Iowa, North Carolina Central, Michigan Bowling Green, Purdue Liberty, Michigan State versus EMU, Minnesota versus Green Bay, Indiana versus Tennessee Tech, and Wisconsin at 10 p.m. in Madison. I guess that'd be 9 o'clock local time versus Eastern Illinois. Wow. That's a
first question. How many of these games will you watch?
I will probably record Penn State, or no, actually I'll be able to watch Penn State Drexel live.
I like that you go straight to recording the Philly guys there. That's a pro move there.
You know how many that game's all Philly players. Penn State versus Drexel.
Good. I like that.
EMU's got it. By the way, no, not EMU. Bowling Green's got a Philly kid, Cam Young from Newman Goretti.
Some East Coast buckets.
Look out for it. No, but there's no real particularly interesting games early. I guess the first meaningful game is Michigan State Notre Dame.
Indiana's in Maui next week. So or not Maui, but they're in Maui in North Carolina. They're in the Maui Invitational played in Asheville, but that starts Monday.
Indiana they have Providence. Don't they? Right.
Shout out to our guy, Ed Cooley. Gotta give him some love. But so many of these teams, again, I think this speaks to the Big Ten handling this a little more responsibly. Very few Big Ten teams are in traditional MTEs at this point.
Right.
They're not all like Michigan was supposed to be in this whole mess with Baylor, right? And so that really kind of shows why they're not playing these games and why Michigan's schedule might look like it does. But like in a normal year, I'd be like, what's this bullshit Michigan schedule playing 5 home games where your toughest games are against UCF and NC State? Right. But at the end of the day, it just kind of makes the most sense. And you're seeing why playing in Mohegan Sun against Villanova and Baylor sounded great, but there's just so much complexity to actually making that work. Are you going to be watching Arizona State on Wednesday night? A little Josh Christopher action? I'll be tuned in.
Sure.
I will be tuned in.
What about, is this right? Tuesday? Oh no, that's December 8th. Sorry.
What do you got for us? What did you dig up on KenPom right now?
No, I'm on the Big Ten site. That was Rutgers Syracuse, but that's a ways away. There's very few interesting games early. I do want to see Indiana play. And I want to see their guard, whatever the hell they're going to be doing between Finney and Lander. I listened to the pod that you did with Alex, and that I thought that was an interesting part of your conversation. Was you guys talking about when you were trying to kind of pick him apart a little bit about?
Yeah, I need the breakdown.
What the hell is going on with that point guard spot there? Because it should, like in theory, with Trace, like they should be pretty good, but like if the guards aren't making shots, you're just like, well, it's just going to be. Is it going to be the same old, or could they be good?
I'm more than happy to be late buying into Indiana. I'm past trying to be early on Archie Miller.
So I wanted to actually message you after I listened to the pod with Alex, which was good. Everyone should go listen to it. But let's say 10-10 for Indiana. Where is Archie on extension versus extermination? Like
extermination.
I hadn't thought of it until.
We just go with termination, or are we going with extermination?
Whatever. I hadn't thought of it until Alex brought it up. Like year 4 under Crean, and he inherited
a shit show.
Just the ashes of, a once proud program. And by year 4, they were, Final Four contender. Certainly an NCAA tournament team, but they were, maybe not I don't know about a Final Four contender. That was before I got here, but point remains, you get it. So if Archie is still just like kind of farting around here after this year, what does that mean? Because like that's a tough spot to just keep starting over.
I think the bar to hire or to fire this year is going to be a lot higher, unless you should have been fired last year.
There's going to be a lot of that.
Like, I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Archie, didn't need to be fired last year. They were going to make the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they go 10-10 and make the tournament, I don't know if people are going to be, chomping at the bit and, jazzed
let's
up.
say
but
this. Miss the tournament. Say they don't go to the NCAA tournament. Because if you're 10-10, you will go. So let's say they miss it. Let's say they go 8-12 and they don't make the NCAA tournament.
Man.
That's tough.
It's tough. It's just going to be such a weird, are we just going to throw out this year? How are we going to feel about it? He didn't have the Assembly Hall home crowd. He didn't have this. He didn't have that.
Sure.
At the same time, you didn't have that Kohl Center crowd. Could have got that dub up there. But either way, I don't know if you can move on. I feel like Tom Crean just kind of got a bad rap overall.
For sure.
He won Big Ten titles. He got good players. He just took everything a little too far. He was just too jazzed up when they were good and just too over the top when they were bad. I think Archie kind of sticks to the middle enough that maybe he's not as polarizing, so you're not as ready to move on. But he hasn't had a winning record in the Big Ten in 3 years. It's not ideal. And the program wasn't a disaster when he inherited it. They were good in 2016, right? That wasn't that long ago. So I don't know what the right answer is there. I mean, Crean got fired a year after he had won the Big Ten championship.
Went to the Sweet 16. And
that was his problem. He couldn't get past the Sweet 16.
Went 15-3 in the league.
And Archie hasn't even coached the tournament game yet. So, and
hasn't won double-digit games in the league.
I feel bad for these coaches, though, that I don't know what to do when you see the little 10 seed asterisks on the Ken Pom page where they would have made the tournament this year. They didn't have the tournament. That's going to really screw some people over. They're going to be well, you never made the NCAA tournament and you're out here screaming it didn't happen. But either way, how do you what does that mean going forward? I don't know. And this year is going to be an asterisk season 2 in all likelihood, right? So I don't know. Can you really move on? I don't think he really has significant recruiting momentum. It's not like Crean was a guy who you'd be ready to get fed up and he would all of a sudden be camped out at someone's house and have the next 5-star ready to go.
Exactly.
I don't really feel like Archie has that juice right now on the recruiting trail.
No. And he lost a Philly guy off his staff. That probably won't help anything, but you got anything else?
No, I'm just ready to watch some hoops. I'm gonna be tuned in. I'm already trying to figure out how you probably have to watch St. Joe's games all the time. How do I get Flow Hoops?
I don't even know what the hell that is.
It's probably. I figured if St. Joe's would be all on.
Hawks are on Fox Sports 1 or whatever the hell, FS1 this week.
All right,
they're playing big time games.
We got to over. Oh yeah, they are getting just curb stomped out the gate.
Big time program, starting out with Auburn and Kansas on Friday and Saturday.
All right. We got a over under 6 wins for the Hawks this year.
I'll take the over all day. They got low key talent.
All right, I'll be good. I'll be tuned in.
Got a transfer from Xavier. They got a transfer from Gonzaga. Ryan Daly's back. They got some dudes, man.
I'll miss just showing up to a random Big Ten city.
I'll tell you what. Whatever the what's it called? Whatever the line is on that Auburn game, I assume Auburn's going to it's going to be a big number. Auburn's had a weird week. This point guard guy, Sharif, whatever the hell his name is, he's not be
playing. No,
not playing. And Hawks are going to be a little bit better than expected. So if you see a 28 or a 22-point line or something,
so
maybe jump on the Hawks there.
4:30 on Thanksgiving. Everyone else is going to be eating turkey with hopefully limited number of family. You're going to be locked in your apartment watching the Hawks Auburn, sweating out a 19-point spread. I'm here for it. I like that.
By myself. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
All right.
Just with a turkey sandwich and a bottle of Jameson.
I'm here for it. I'm going to miss just showing up in a Big Ten city on a night before a game, and we have to go to some bar to find them that have the Hawks game on Friday night, watching them try to get those wins.
These are the things you miss. That's true. Going to be a weird year, but I think there's going to be games, so let's do this thing. We will record at some point between now and the weekend games, right?
Yeah, I think we'll try to find a time.
Maybe like a Friday spot or something like that.
You're hard to pin down over here, but we'll try to find a time.
Maybe Friday morning. I think I'm playing golf on Friday afternoon. But
All right.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. Make sure you are subscribed. This is the important stuff. Make sure you are subscribed to
Hoops. Save it for the end of the podcast.
Make sure you subscribe to The Athletic. That is what keeps this podcast going. If you would be so kind as to leave us a review or rating. I haven't checked the ratings and reviews in a while. Are there any fresh ones in there?
I can't say I check. I respect the podcast that like read them off and like it's just a nice banter. We don't have time for that.
I mean, we don't need to stroke the egos of our listeners. They know who they are. If any of you would be so kind to leave us a review, it does help. Apparently, I don't know. And and that'll do it for this week. For Dylan, I am Brendan, and we both wish everyone seriously a very happy and healthy Thanksgiving to all of you and yours. Be safe out there, and tip those bartenders and servers.
All right.